Watch a common octopus on a coral reef in the Mediterranean. It is sitting on a patch of red sponge. Its skin is red, not painted red, not approximately red, but a specific, mottled, textured red that matches the sponge underneath it, down to the small bumps on the surface. Then something moves at the edge of its vision. It pushes off, glides a body length to the left, and lands on a patch of pale coral. And before it has finished settling, the red is gone. The skin is now pale, faintly pink, with a texture that raises tiny bumps to imitate the coral's roughness. The whole transformation, from red on sponge to pale on coral, takes less than a second. Do it again. It drifts down onto bare sand. The skin flattens, drops its bumps, goes grainy and tan. Under a second, again. Onto a dark rock crevice. Deep brown, blotchy, motionless. Under a second. Now here is what is strange about what you just watched. That animal has roughly 500 million neurons in its body, comparable to a dog. But only about a third of them are in its central brain. The other two-thirds, more than 300 million of them, are living somewhere else. They are distributed down the 8 arms and, in a limited way, into the skin itself. Which is the first oddness. The second is worse. The octopus is colorblind. Its eyes contain a single type of photoreceptor. It cannot see the difference between red sponge and pale coral. It cannot see the color it is matching. And its central brain, the part you would normally call the animal, is too small and too slow to be personally directing millions of skin cells to fire in coordinated patterns in less than a second anyway. So who is doing the camouflage? That is the question this video is about. Not the trick itself. The trick is famous. The question is the wiring. Because if the brain is not making the decision and the eyes cannot see the answer, then something else in that animal is solving the problem. Something that is not, in the way you and I use the word, a mind. Or maybe something that is a mind, but not one located where you would expect to find it. Here is where we are going. First, why an animal would ever evolve this arrangement in the first place. Because it is not the arrangement you or I have, and evolution does not build strange things without a reason. Then, how the wiring actually works, explained plainly, without the jargon that usually gets in the way of these conversations. Then, and this matters, where the system fails. Because every popular science video about octopuses shows you the highlight reel, the jar opening, the escape from the tank, the disappearing act on the reef. Almost none of them show you what this animal cannot do and what it pays to be built this way. And finally, the comparison you actually came here for. How your body, your senses, your very human way of processing the world stacks up against a creature that seems to have solved a computing problem hundreds of millions of years before we started trying to solve it ourselves. So, why build an animal this way? To answer that, you have to go back somewhere between 150 and 200 million years ago, which is when the ancestors of modern octopuses did something that, in evolutionary terms, is close to suicidal. They gave up their shell. Their cousins kept theirs. The nautilus still floats around today, inside a beautiful spiral shell that has barely changed in shape for hundreds of millions of years. The cuttlefish kept a smaller internal version of one. But the octopus lineage went the other direction entirely. They abandoned hard armor completely and became a bag of muscle in a world of teeth. This is a bad plan on paper. Sharks were already patrolling those oceans. Bony fish were getting faster and more numerous. Later, marine mammals would arrive and turn out to be some of the most efficient predators the ocean has ever produced. If you are a soft animal in that ocean and you cannot outswim any of them, and the octopus cannot, sustained swimming is not its strength, then you have to solve the problem of not being seen and not being caught in some other way. You have to become a problem solver. You have to become fast at deciding where to hide, and better at hiding than the predator is at looking. And you have to do this with 8 arms that are essentially 8 independent problems in fluid dynamics, because a soft limb in water does not move the way a jointed limb on land does. A soft limb has, in principle, an infinite number of ways it can bend. Now imagine you are the central brain of that animal, and you are trying to run this. You have 8 arms, each of which can bend anywhere along its length in any direction. You have a skin that needs to match a background you cannot fully see. You have a predator closing in. And you have, this is the part that gets forgotten, a fairly small brain, sitting between your eyes, doing all of this in real time. Just the arms alone, the raw problem of coordinating that many degrees of freedom from a central point, is more than that brain can handle. It is more than a much bigger brain could handle, honestly. This is the same problem robotics engineers hit today when they try to build a flexible arm and control it from a central computer. The amount of information that would have to be flowing back and forth just to move the arm smoothly is enormous, and the delays involved make real-time reaction almost impossible. Central control does not scale to bodies like this. So evolution did something that, from a design perspective, is genuinely elegant. It stopped trying. It gave up on central control and pushed the intelligence outward. It put nerve cords in each arm, packed with neurons, capable of running local programs on their own. It seeded the skin with light-detecting proteins so that the surface of the animal could react to what was happening around it without waiting for the brain to notice. It made the arms into something closer to semi-independent limbs than to remote-controlled tools. Which means the animal you saw disappear on the coral reef was not, in the way you would assume, being operated by its brain moment to moment. It was more like a coordinated group of specialists, each handling its own local piece of the problem, with the central brain setting the overall goal and everything else figuring out how to get there. The animal became a distributed system, and once you know that, the coral reef trick starts to make a different kind of sense. The reason it happens in under a second is not that the brain is thinking fast. The brain is not really doing that part at all. The reason it happens in under a second is that the parts of the animal closest to the problem, the skin cells that need to change, the arms that need to reposition, the sensors that need to read the environment, are the parts making the call. There is no bottleneck. There is no queue of instructions traveling from a central office out to 8 departments. Each department already knows its job, so let's open the animal up. Not literally, figuratively. Let's look at what is actually inside those arms and that skin, because the phrase distributed system is doing a lot of work, and it deserves to be unpacked into something you can picture. Start with a single arm. Pick any one of the 8. They are all built the same way. Running down the center of that arm, from the base where it meets the body all the way out to the fine tip, is a thick nerve cord. Not a wire, a cord, a dense rope of neurons packed together, with clusters of extra neurons bulging out along its length at regular intervals. Each of those clusters is called a ganglion, which is a word you can ignore. What matters is that they act like small local processors, and there are a lot of them. In a single arm of a common octopus, the neuron count is in the tens of millions. Across all 8 arms combined, you are looking at more than 300 million neurons living outside the central brain. That is more neurons than a rat has in its entire body, distributed across 8 limbs, on one animal. Now, what are all those neurons doing? Here is the surprising part. If you take an arm and give it a task, say, reaching for a piece of food, the arm does most of the work of that reach without checking in with the brain. The brain says, roughly, food, that direction, go. The arm figures out the rest. Which segment to bend first, how much to curl, which way to twist, which suckers to open, which to keep closed. Whether to grip or to just brush against the object. All of that is being computed locally, in the nerve cord of the arm itself, using information the arm is picking up from its own touch and chemical sensors as it moves. The brain is not doing the choreography. The arm is choreographing itself, in response to what it is feeling. You can test this in a laboratory setting, and researchers have. If you take an arm that has been separated from the body, and this is grim, but it is real, that arm will continue to react to touch, to reach towards stimuli, to curl its suckers around objects, for a period of time after separation. It is not, in any meaningful sense, alive as an animal. There is no octopus there anymore. But there is enough local circuitry in the nerve cord to run the arm's basic programs on its own for a while, without a brain telling it what to do. That is how self-contained the arm is. It is closer to a semi-independent creature attached to a larger creature than it is to a limb in the way you and I understand limbs. Your arm does not do anything without your brain. Their arm does most things without theirs. Now widen the picture. You have 8 of these semi-independent limbs, each running its own local programs. How do they coordinate? If each arm is doing its own thing, what stops the animal from turning into a tangle of arms all pulling in different directions? The answer is that the arms talk to each other, but they do it in a way that avoids the central brain as a bottleneck. There is a nerve ring around the base of the arms. Imagine a loop of cable connecting all 8 arms to each other in a circle, and information can pass between arms through that ring without traveling all the way up to the brain and back down. So when one arm finds something interesting, the neighboring arms can be informed and adjust their behavior, and none of that has to be routed through the central processor. It is like a group of people in a room who can talk to each other directly, instead of having to send every message through a manager sitting in another building. The manager still sets the agenda, but the coordination happens on the floor, and now the skin. This is where it gets genuinely strange, because the skin of an octopus is doing something that no skin on your body does, and it took researchers a long time to accept it. In the skin, not in the eyes, in the skin, there are proteins called opsins. Opsins are the same class of proteins that live in the retinas of your eyes and detect light. They are what makes vision possible, and they are scattered through the skin of the octopus, embedded in the surface of the animal. Which means the skin, at least at some basic level, can detect light on its own. Not detailed images, not shapes or edges, but light, its presence, its intensity, and possibly, in a limited way, some information about its wavelength. Sit with that for a moment. The animal is colorblind through its eyes, but its skin appears to be picking up light information the eyes are not equipped to pick up. Researchers found this first in the California two-spot octopus about a decade ago, and the finding is still being investigated. The exact role skin opsins play in camouflage decisions is not fully settled. Estimates vary on how much of the color matching this can actually explain, but the basic fact that there are light-detecting proteins in octopus skin is not in dispute anymore. The skin is, in some limited sense, a sensor, not a full second visual system, but not nothing. Now put all of that together. You have a central brain that sets goals. You have 8 arms with their own nerve cords, each running local programs and coordinating through a nerve ring without going through the brain. You have a skin that can, to some degree, detect light directly. And you have millions of tiny sacs of pigment in that same skin, chromatophores, if you want the word for them, that expand and contract using their own tiny muscles, changing what color and pattern the surface displays. Those chromatophores are controlled by nerves that also run out from the arms and the body, not from the brain making a top-down decision about every cell. So the reef vanish, replayed with this in mind, looks like this. Light hits the skin. The skin picks up local information about brightness and, possibly, about the surrounding environment. The chromatophores near that patch of skin respond quickly, without waiting for a central instruction. Neighboring patches of skin, receiving similar light information, do the same. The arms, feeling the surface they are resting on, because the suckers are packed with touch and taste sensors, feel the texture of coral or sand or rock, and adjust their posture and the little raised bumps on the skin, called papillae, to match. All of this happens across the surface of the animal at once, in parallel, in different regions of the body, without any single controller being in charge of all of it. It is not 8 departments taking turns. It is thousands of little decisions happening simultaneously. The analogy I used earlier, 9 semi-independent workers, closer to a jazz ensemble than an orchestra, is close, but it undersells the number. It is not 9, it is thousands. Every patch of skin, every sucker, every segment of every arm is contributing its own tiny piece of the decision. The central brain is not the conductor. It is more like the composer who wrote the theme they are all improvising on. Let's stay with the trade-offs, because the elegance of a distributed system is only half the story. The other half is what you give up to get it, and in the octopus's case, what you give up is significant. Significant enough that, for all the impressive things this animal can do, its intelligence hits a ceiling that a much simpler-looking mammal blows past without noticing. Start with the camouflage, because that is where the highlight reels stop and the honest footage begins. In the wild, the reef vanish works often. It does not work always. Dolphins hunt octopuses regularly. Groupers hunt them. Moray eels hunt them. Seals hunt them. If camouflage were the invincible shield it looks like in nature documentaries, none of that would happen at the scale it does, and it happens at a very large scale. An octopus in the open ocean, away from crevices and cover, is a soft, slow-moving meal for anything with teeth and the patience to wait for a mistake. The camouflage buys time. It does not buy safety, and there are specific conditions under which it fails outright. Put an octopus in an aquarium tank with a checkerboard pattern painted on the floor, sharp geometric shapes, hard edges, colors that do not appear in the natural world, and the camouflage system struggles. It picks a pattern, but the pattern is a rough approximation, not a match. The system evolved against reefs and sand and rock, textures that vary in a certain range of ways. Present it with something outside that range, and the local processing does what any specialized system does when it is pushed past its training environment. It makes a decent guess. It does not vanish. There is a related failure that is more dangerous in the wild: novel predators. When a predator hunts a species for millions of years, the prey evolves defenses tuned to the way that predator hunts. Modern octopuses have been evolving against fish and cephalopod-eating mammals for a long time, and they are good at hiding from them. But introduce something the lineage has not seen before: a new fishing technique, a new invasive species, a change in the light of the water because of pollution. And the responses that used to work do not always transfer. The distributed system is fast, but it is not creative in the moment. It runs its programs. If the situation is inside the range of situations it was built for, the programs succeed. Outside that range, they do not. Now step back from the camouflage and look at the intelligence itself. This is where the honest comparison to mammals gets uncomfortable for the octopus. An octopus can solve puzzles. It can open jars from the outside and, in at least some documented cases, from the inside. It can navigate mazes. It can remember which of two symbols is associated with a reward. It appears to recognize individual human handlers in laboratory settings. All of this is real, and none of it is trivial. Most invertebrates cannot do any of it. In the animal kingdom, this is a genuinely impressive cognitive profile. But watch what happens when you compare it to a mammal of similar neuron count. A dog, roughly comparable in total neurons, does things the octopus does not appear able to do. A dog learns from other dogs. A dog watches another animal solve a problem and picks up the solution by observation. A dog can be taught, over months and years, to perform coordinated tasks with a human partner that require sustained attention across long periods. A dog forms bonds. A dog grieves. A dog remembers individuals across years and modifies its behavior toward them based on accumulated history. The octopus does almost none of that. And the reason is not that the octopus is stupid. The reason is structural, and it is worth understanding, because it tells you something important about what intelligence actually is. Most octopus species are solitary. They meet other octopuses to mate, and occasionally to fight over territory. Otherwise, they live alone. This means there is very little pressure, evolutionarily, for the kind of intelligence that reads social cues, tracks relationships, or learns by watching others. The whole cognitive toolkit that mammals developed for group living, the ability to model what another animal is thinking, the ability to cooperate on tasks, the ability to teach, is largely absent because the ancestral situation did not reward it. You do not need to read a face when you never see another face. You do not need to teach when you never meet a student. And then there is the harder problem, the one that sits underneath everything else and, honestly, is a little heartbreaking once you understand it. Most octopus species live for 1 to 2 years. That is the entire lifespan. From hatching to death, some smaller species live even less. A common octopus, the animal we opened with on the reef, is unlikely to see its 3rd birthday under almost any circumstances. And the death is not gradual. Female octopuses, in most species, stop eating after laying their eggs. They stay with the eggs, guarding them, cleaning them, gently blowing water over them until the eggs hatch. And then, weakened by months without food, they die. Male octopuses often die shortly after mating. The reproductive event is, for both sexes, essentially the final act. Now think about what this means for intelligence. Everything an octopus figures out in its short life, every solution to a puzzle, every good hiding spot, every lesson learned about which predators to avoid and which prey to pursue, dies with it. There is no passing it on. The mother does not raise the young. She dies before they are old enough to learn from her. The young hatch into the ocean already alone, already having to figure everything out from scratch. Whatever the mother knew is gone. Whatever the father knew is gone. Every generation of octopuses starts, cognitively, from close to zero. Compare this to what a mammal culture does. A group of dolphins passes hunting techniques between individuals and across generations. A pod in one region uses a technique the pod in the next bay over has never heard of, and juveniles learn it from their mothers over years of watching. Chimpanzee troops have tool use traditions that differ from troop to troop and persist across generations. Humans, obviously, have built the entire structure of civilization on the ability to accumulate knowledge across lifetimes, to teach, to write things down, to hand the next generation everything the previous one figured out. This is not a small thing. It is arguably the thing. The reason mammalian intelligence looks the way it looks and reaches the levels it reaches is that it compounds. Each generation does not start from scratch. Each generation starts from where the last one ended. The octopus does not have that, cannot have it. The lifespan is too short, and the social structure is too thin. Whatever the individual figures out, the individual keeps for less than 2 years, and then it is gone. There is no octopus culture. There is no accumulated wisdom. There is only, in each generation, another animal figuring out for the first time how to open a shell, how to hide from a moray, how to find the good crevices in its patch of reef. Every octopus that has ever lived has had to invent its life from scratch. That is the ceiling. That is the thing the intelligence cannot get past. So let's do the comparison honestly, sense by sense. Not to declare a winner, because that framing misses the point, but to see clearly what each body is actually good at, and where the gap between the two is largest. Start with vision. Your eyes contain 3 types of color-detecting cells, each tuned to a different range of wavelengths, roughly red, green, and blue. Your brain combines the signals from all 3 and produces what you experience as color. It is a good system. You can distinguish, by most estimates, somewhere in the range of 1 million different shades. The octopus has 1 type of color-detecting cell. In the standard sense of the word, it sees the world in shades of brightness, not shades of hue. On this measure, your visual system is straightforwardly better. You see color, they do not. But look at what the octopus's eye does that yours does not. Their pupil is a horizontal slit that stays level with the horizon, no matter how the animal tilts its body. The eye rolls in the socket to keep the slit oriented. This gives them a very wide field of view, with minimal distortion at the edges. Their retina is arranged in a way that avoids the blind spot you have in each of your eyes, because the wiring of a cephalopod retina runs behind the light-sensitive cells rather than in front of them. Every human retina has a small patch where the optic nerve leaves the eye and there are no photoreceptors, a blank spot in your visual field that your brain fills in with a guess. The octopus does not have this. Their vision, in the parts of it that overlap with yours, is in some ways cleaner, not more colorful. Cleaner. And then there is the skin, which we have already discussed as a sensor, but which deserves a direct comparison. Your skin is sensitive. You can feel a hair moving on the back of your hand. You can feel temperature differences of a fraction of a degree. But your skin does not detect light. It reacts to sunlight over hours by producing melanin, but it does not, in the way an octopus's skin does, respond to light in real time as an input to behavior. That capacity is simply not present in human biology. Your skin is a barrier and a touch sensor. Theirs is a barrier, a touch sensor, and something more. Now touch itself. This is where the gap gets largest, and it goes in the octopus's favor by a wide margin. Your sense of touch is concentrated in your fingertips. If you put two pins close together on the pad of your index finger and slowly move them apart, most people can feel them as two separate points at a distance of about 2 millimeters. That is your resolution, the finest spatial detail you can pick up through touch. On other parts of your body, your back, your thigh, the resolution is much worse, sometimes as coarse as several centimeters. Your touch, in other words, is not distributed evenly. Certain parts of you are exquisitely sensitive. Most of you is not. The octopus is different. Every one of its arms is lined with suckers, often more than 200 per arm, adding up to somewhere in the range of 1,600 or more across the whole animal. And each of those suckers is a sensor in its own right. Each one contains touch receptors comparable in density to what you have in your fingertips, and each one contains chemical receptors as well, which is to say, the octopus can taste with its suckers. When one of its arms touches a surface, it is not just feeling the texture. It is also picking up chemical information about what that surface is, whether it is prey, whether it is another octopus, whether it is something dangerous. And this is happening independently at every sucker, all 1,600 of them, in parallel. Imagine your fingers, but there are 1,600 of them. They are spread over your entire arm surface, and each of them can taste what it touches. That is closer to the octopus's experience of contact with the world. Your best touch, the sensitivity in your fingertips, is only slightly worse per unit area. But you have a small handful of highly sensitive points. They have 1,600 of them, each functioning as an independent little tongue and little fingertip fused together. The difference is not in the fineness of any single point of contact. The difference is in the quantity and the distribution, and the fact that each of those contact points can chemically identify what it is touching without anything else being consulted. You could not survive a day with that sense turned up to what they experience. The volume of information coming in through the skin would overwhelm a central brain like yours, which is, of course, precisely why they do not have a central brain like yours. The architecture we spent the earlier sections describing is not incidental to the sense. It is what makes the sense possible in the first. You cannot build a body with 1,600 taste fingers and then try to route all of that information through one processing center. It would not work. The distributed processing is not a strange choice. It is the only choice that lets a body like this function at all. The skin is reading the light. The suckers are reading the texture. The arms are running local programs to reposition the body. The chromatophores are firing region by region, matching what the skin around them is picking up. The central brain has set the goal, hide, and everything else has taken it from there. What looks like a single act of vanishing is, mechanically, a committee of thousands reaching consensus faster than a single decision-maker could have even received the question. And now the last piece, the one people always want to know about at the end of a video like this. Can we build it? The honest answer is, not yet. Not close. Engineers have been trying, and the attempts are worth looking at laboratories in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Japan, in Israel. Teams of roboticists and materials scientists have spent the last 15 or 20 years trying to reproduce pieces of what the octopus does. Soft robotics is now its own field, and it exists in large part because of this animal. Researchers have built flexible arms that can bend in multiple directions, grip irregular objects, and squeeze through gaps that a rigid arm could not. Some of these arms are impressive. A few of them can pick up a grape without crushing it. A few of them can wrap around a coffee cup and lift it. Compared to a traditional industrial robot arm, which is essentially a series of hinges and motors, these soft arms are a genuine advance. But compared to a real octopus arm, they are toys. The real arm has millions of neurons running it locally. The robotic arm has, at best, a set of pressure sensors and a computer somewhere else running the control loop. The real arm has 1,600 taste fingers along its length. The robotic arm has, if it is very sophisticated, a small camera and a handful of touch sensors near the tip. The real arm can twist, curl, elongate, shorten, stiffen at any point along its length, and coordinate with 7 other arms doing the same things. The robotic arm can do a small subset of those motions with a delay you can see with the naked eye. The camouflage attempts are further behind. Researchers have built sheets of material that can change color in response to signals. Small panels that shift from one shade to another, or that display simple patterns. There are prototypes of adaptive camouflage skin that can match a background in a controlled setting. But these are, without exception, being told what to display by a computer that is looking at the background with a camera and calculating what the panels should show. The material is not deciding anything. The material is a screen, and the resolution is nowhere near what an octopus does. The switching speed is slower, the range of colors is narrower. The texture change, the raising and lowering of small bumps to match a rough surface, is barely being attempted, and where it is being attempted, the results are crude. None of which is a failure on the part of the engineers. It is a measure of how hard the problem actually is. The octopus is not just displaying colors, it is running a distributed control system that decides, locally, what to display, based on inputs that are being gathered locally by the same skin that is doing the displaying. To build a synthetic version, you would need materials that can sense and act at the same time, in the same place, with local processing built in. You would need something closer to a computer that is also a skin. We do not have that. We can build a skin. We can build a computer. We can even, at some cost, stick them together. We cannot yet build the thing where the two are the same thing, distributed across an entire surface, deciding on their own. And this is the beat worth landing on. The octopus solved a computing problem before there were computers. 200 million years before there were computers, roughly. It solved the problem of how to coordinate a very complicated body without a big central processor by giving up on the idea of a central processor for most tasks and pushing the intelligence outward, into the body itself. That solution has been sitting there in the oceans for that entire time, doing what it does, without anyone watching, without anyone learning from it, until fairly recently. And now we are watching, and we are learning, and we cannot yet copy it. The word for what the octopus is, in the language of engineering, is a proof of concept, a working demonstration that a body can be built this way, that intelligence does not have to live in one place, that a sensor and an actuator can be the same organ. That coordination across a soft body, with many degrees of freedom, is possible if you are willing to give up the metaphor of a brain in charge of a body and replace it with something stranger, a whole animal thinking, all at once, with the part between its eyes doing less of the thinking than you would expect. Which brings us back to the reef. The animal you watched at the start of this video was doing something that we, with all our tools and all our theory, cannot yet reproduce. Not with our best robots, not with our best materials, not with our best control systems. It was doing it with a body that has existed, in roughly its current form, for longer than mammals have existed. And it was doing it, when you saw it, in under a second, without effort, without apparent thought, on a Tuesday afternoon, on a reef somewhere in the Mediterranean, unwatched by anyone but a diver with a camera, and, eventually, you. That is the ability. That is what it looks like when a body computes. And the strangest thing about it, when you finally see it clearly, is not that the octopus is alien. It is that our own architecture, brain here, body there, taking orders, starts to look like the unusual arrangement. There are many more distributed animals in the world than centralized ones, once you start counting. The octopus is just the one that pushed the strategy the furthest, the one that turned a body into a mind. We are only beginning to understand what that means, and we are, so far, unable to build it.